Hi guys, and welcome to the Mediaworks Masterclass. This time it's on all things video. So the first question is, why are we doing it not only in this format, but what's the reasons for doing it? So first of all, on the format, so we thought we've got a lot of things to show you. We've got video, we've got a lot of animation, we've got a lot of 3D, we've got some Faux Out of Home or Fake Out of Home stuff as well. And this format really lends itself to meaning we can show you all that without it, lagging on Teams or not coming across properly. So we thought that this format was really good for that. And also the reason for doing it is we want to empower individuals, we want to empower businesses to really utilize the power of video across their marketing channels and across their marketing strategy to really make the most of it and utilize just how powerful it can be. So that's the main reason we're doing it. We're going to have a live Q&A running throughout, and there's also going to be a bit of an open Q&A at the end. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get a lot out of it and a lot of value. And yeah, let's just make a start. So just a few quick introductions. So who am I? My name's Joe Hellier and I'm senior videographer here at Mediaworks. I've been here for about 3 years, and my specialization is really taking concepts from concept to completion, working on it all the way through the production process. From storyboarding, scripting, coming up with the initial ideas, all the way through production, on-site filming days, and then we get to things like post-production, editing, color grading, everything like that. I work with a variety of clients, big and small, and I really love what I do. I think that really makes Mediaworks what it is, that everyone who comes to work loves what they do. And sitting to my right is Jack Peach.
Hey guys, my name's Jack Peach. I'm a motion designer here at Mediaworks, and I've been here for about 1.5 years. I'm very much looking forward to speaking about how we can fuse computer-generated imagery with video and explain the true power of 3D software and how it can be implemented across all aspects of marketing, video, and production.
Yeah, so just to simplify all that, what that really means is I work on a lot of the on-site stuff that we film, so actually working with clients, on the ground, filming with a camera, and Jack specializes in animation, 3D, and all that lovely stuff. So that's kind of how we work together. We've also got a video team that we sit within, and obviously we'll work closely with all the other teams as well, PPC, SEO, design, all those. So yeah, let's get into it. Hope you enjoy it, and I hope you find some value in it as well. So before we get into talking about where videos can be used, your PPC campaign, your SEO campaign, across Out of Home, I think it's really important first to touch on the types of videos that can be used. So obviously we've got our brand-led explainers, we've got our how-to videos, we've got things like talking heads, and they're all great and we know all about them. And obviously we've got things like animation as well, and for Out of Home and 3D and things like that. But I think the thing that we want to get across is that a lot of the time videos can be sold as a single-use product, in terms of you will get a video for a certain amount of money and you'll have one use out of it, and then that's it, that's done. But where we like to approach it is not only are we backed by data and audience insight so that we know how videos are going to hit the mark and really achieve what we want it to achieve, we like to break our content up into different formats. We like to deliver them right across your marketing mix so that you're getting the most out of them. So instead of just having, one slice of the pie and that's your video, we want to try and give you the whole pie with all these slices that we know is actually going to make an impact on your business, which is a lot like something like 3D rendering and product rendering, if I'm right, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the most powerful things you can obtain from CGI or product rendering is that once a 3D model is constructed, you can recycle it, relight it, retexture it. It's not just finished there. Product rendering is a very popular production pipeline at the moment, and it enables consumers to render and visualize their products like no other way. The logistics behind the traditional video photography shoot compared to shooting a product digitally is night and day. Once you have a 3D model, you have the ability to retexture it, you can relight it, you can visit, you can recycle the scene as much as you want. It is quite the opposite of a single-use asset.
So why use video? It's a big question, I think, and it's a question that I think over the years people are starting to come around to. Video is absolutely massive now, but go back 20 years ago and I don't think that was the same. So everyone knows video is important, but why? So just to throw a stat out there, I know for a fact that 84% of people they've said that they've been convinced to buy a product because they watched a video about it. So that really shows the power of video and the power that it can have over customers, over your audience. Obviously, it depends what your product is, and it depends how you want to go about implementing video into your strategy. But I mean, it's been talked about and it's been shown time and time again that video is absolutely crucial, and it's something that going forwards we really need to start thinking about putting into our social, our website, all of these different campaigns, so we can really make the most of it. So yeah, it's just an absolutely massive thing, and we love it, obviously. So just to touch a little bit more on our creative approach, we tend to break it into 6 clear steps. We find that that's really helpful, I think, when dealing with videos. I think the first step that we are likely to talk about when we're talking to any business is immersion. We tend to conduct an immersion session with any client. So that basically means that when we first work on a project or we first work on a campaign, that we really like to get under the skin of the business or the campaign. We like to think of ourselves as an extension of your in-house marketing team, and we really like to get under the skin, learn the product inside out, learn the campaign inside out, and that then allows us to be a lot better suited to actually delivering the results and delivering the creative. The second step is strategy, which I've already touched on. It's all about audience research. It's all about making sure, that the creative that we're producing is backed by data, it's backed by audience research, and we know that it's going to target the right people in the right places. The third step, which obviously we've got a massive part in, it's design and ideation. So really taking all of the concepts and all of the plans that we've built up along the way in terms of those outcomes and actually putting it into practice. So for me, it's storyboarding or scripting or planning the shoot days. But for Jack, it's more like
a lot of modeling involved,
yeah.
Whether that's creating assets, not just 3D. We can compile 2D environments and worlds as well. If a client is wanting to take an animation-based approach to their video, we need to make sure we're delivering the USPs and we're fully aligned with their branding. Obviously, it all starts with the digital sculpt of whatever product we're making, whether it's a photorealistic makeup product or something a little bit more abstract. It all starts with a mesh, a digitalized 3D model.
Which I think brings us on nicely to our next bit, which is production, which is fairly obvious. It's obviously making sure that when it comes to filming, when it comes to the shoot days, that I'm ready to film. I know exactly what I'm going to get. With Jack, it might be producing actually the 3D models and putting them into the edit. Post-production is obviously the editing phase, so color grading, VFX, things like that. And then the last stage is amplification and analysis. So that's putting the campaign live with all the strategy that goes into it, actually launching the campaign, measuring the results, making sure that the campaign is actually living up to the KPIs that we've set, whether that's PPC, social, SEO, no matter what it is. And then after that, it's about measuring the campaign and making sure that it's hitting those targets. So when we're actually leveraging the power of video and when we're thinking about where to put our creatives, I think the most obvious place to start is how we can use video to improve our website. Obviously, a website is the bedrock of any business. It's your shop window. It's where your customers are likely to go first and foremost, if not your socials, obviously. And a lot of businesses out there do use video on the website. But I've been, trolling a few examples and really, thinking about, all right, you might be using video on your site, but what can we do to make it better? Because I think there's always things we can do to improve our outputs. So what are they? So the first tip really is that accessibility is absolutely key. The amount of times that I see videos on websites, but they don't have captions. And if they do have captions, they might not have audio description. And these are things that nowadays it's absolutely massive. We want to be inclusive. We want to make sure that everyone that can watch the content or everyone that is able to watch the content can actually consume it in the best way possible for them. So subtitles are standard now. And audio description is something that we can start to think about when it comes to tailoring our content to people who might be visually impaired. The next thing that we can talk about, and this one's a bit of a cheat, I think, but if you do have content on your website, make sure you're snipping it up and posting it across your socials. The third tip, I think, is make sure any video content on your site, so if you do have content on your site, make sure it's not viewed in isolation. What I mean by that is if you do have a video, maybe it's a how-to video, maybe it's a walkthrough, maybe it's a brand promo, make sure there's context around that. So don't just plonk it on a page and forget about it. Make sure that there's any that the content on the site, headings or any copy, actually explains the video, actually provides context, because then that means that the user is going to be more likely to watch it, to engage with it, and it's probably going to land because people know exactly what it is. The next one is make sure that any video content on your site is web dev friendly or friendly to the web devs. What I mean by that is make sure it's in relevant formats. So if it's a traditional video, it's probably going to be likely to be MP4 or a MOV. But with 3D, it's more likely to be...
Yeah, it can get a little bit complicated with 3D because we can render those 3D visuals as MP4s or MOVs as a video. We can render them as videos, but what companies and agencies are doing at the moment are utilizing real-time rendering on websites, and that's where a 3D asset is, it's as it's called, is rendered in real time.
Yeah.
It's being rendered on the back end of a website. It's interacting with your cursor, it's interacting with your mouse cursor, your scroll, whatever it may be. There's two sides to how we can implement 3D on websites.
Oh, okay.
It's either video or it's a real time.
And the last tip for me is make sure that any video on your site is supported by audience research or it's SEO friendly. So what do I mean by that? We've been working on a few projects recently where we know that a customer or a business wants to rank better in a certain area. So what we've done is we've done some keyword research and we figured out which users land on the site most frequently based on what keyword term. We've then tailored the video around that. So I don't know, let's just say, for example, there is a tree surgeon and his customers land on his site and ask, what do tree surgeons do? Maybe they don't know what they do. It's a bit of an odd example, but I'm going to go with it. We might make a video with the tree surgeon where he's explaining the tricks of his trade, and we'll put that on his site with some follow-up content. So it really, it's going to be likely that that's found by people who are searching for that. If you do it in the right way, and if you deliver it in the right way, and it's relevant enough in terms of the landing page, then Google can actually pull that through as a rich snippet or also a SERP feature. So it means that people are going to be Googling it, they're going to find your content, they're going to go straight onto your site, and then they're more likely to do business with you. So those are things that we can start to think about when we are thinking about how we can implement video on your website. So on screen now, these are just a few of the examples of things that we've worked on in the past with regards to video and websites. So we've got things like Johnny Johnson, where they found that a lot of their users, because obviously a lot of them are elderly, a lot of them were struggling to navigate the site. So we came up with some how-to videos that would ease that user journey and really help the customers find their way around the site. We've got Flowgas, who we created an online portal, and then we supported that with some how-to videos of how to actually use the portal. And we've also got some 3D renders on there for
Believe Housing.
Believe Housing, yeah.
As mentioned earlier, there's two sides to 3D rendering on websites. It's either a video that you've compiled from the 3D models or whatever scene you've created, or it's the real-time assets that you put on there. In this case, it was video. We were utilizing video 3D for website.
Yeah, I think the thing about that is we could have easily just went with a traditional asset. But I think going with 3D, not only does it give you that flexibility, but the actual output and the end result is so much more effective, I think.
Absolutely, and on the back end of that, you're able to world build in 3D. These, whatever you're rendering, whatever world build assets you're creating are 100% unique. You know, I think we're in a very saturated market at the moment, and I think avoiding stock is quite important at the moment. I think clients are definitely getting bored of stock. So being able to create unique assets for them, like the example shown on screen here, it's a very cohesive way of portraying their brands.
It's a really good point, actually, saying that people are getting bored of stock. I'd agree with that. And what I'd also say is that I think users and people who actually engage with websites and engage with content, I think they're getting a lot more switched on. And I think users can spot stock a lot easier than they used to.
Absolutely.
So I think if you have stock on your website, people can see through it, and it's not the end of the world, but I do think that if you just have tailored photos, you have tailored video assets, and it's all about your brand and they're actually specific to your brand, I think that is so much more personable. I think it makes you so much more authentic, and I think it just makes you stand out. So that's a really good point. So these are just a few examples on screen of some of the content that I was talking about. So we could go with a video-led banner, which has proven to be quite effective in the past. We can go with a brand-led explainer that we maybe place on the homepage or a certain landing page on the site, so when users get there, everything about your brand and everything about your business is already explained to them in a really concise, effective video. And like I've already mentioned, we've got things like how-to videos and videos that really help ease that customer journey. So if a customer's struggling on site, maybe it's something to do with navigation, maybe they've got a question that they want answering, really tailoring your content to help them is a good way to approach it, I think. But on the other side of things, I think one of the exciting things about video and about 3D is we don't just have to maybe produce a FAQ video or a how-to video or a brand-led explainer. We can really, really start to push the boundaries of being creative, which I think this one on screen right now does just that, Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very flashy. It's rendered in real time.
Yeah.
Maybe not so beneficial for functionality, but you get that instant wow factor when you're on the website, and you can't help but think, what else could they create on the back end of a website?
Yeah.
So, I think implementing any form of 3D within the website, even if you're just lacing it throughout the website, it doesn't have to be so in your face on the main landing page like it is here. As long as some of it is implemented across your website, clients are going to think about it. It's going to stop and make people think.
Yeah.
In this case, the astronaut is following the cursor.
That's cool.
You get immersed there for a few seconds. You have a little moment with it. This is, as mentioned earlier, two sides. It's either real time on a website or it's a video. In this case, it is a 3D rendered video. But that video, that 3D animation is assigned to the user's scroll wheel. Not so beneficial for functionality here, but it's such a great way to tell a story, and it's stuck with me ever since I scrolled through on my own journey through this page.
Yeah, I think with something like this, it really does make your website stand out, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Obviously, the groundwork you actually have to lay down to achieve something that's this creative is probably quite. And it's probably a lot of groundwork, but the actual end result is quite amazing.
For sure, and this is ironically pokes a little bit at the product rendering. This is another form of product rendering, but they've decided to go very abstract with it, break it apart with simulations. Whatever 3D software is used here is obviously trying to replicate that studio lighting, and this would be impossible to film.
And then the last example, which is probably just a bit more about world building.
Yeah, it goes back to that cohesive storytelling and brand identity. Being able to compile all of these assets in the same lighting setup with the same models, the same rendering setup basically means that all of those assets are going to look like they were rendered together, as opposed to trying to find iconography, characters from stock, and you're pulling lots of random assets and trying to consolidate them all into one brand identity is hard. It's impossible to do. So being able to produce 3D models, characters, world building, it's endless possibilities in what you can create in a computer. We've seen it before. We've seen the Admiral characters. We've seen the Michelin Man. And these are huge icons.
Yeah, I would agree. I think something like this, I think the one word that jumps out to me is consistency when I see something like this. I think because of the way it was created, everything just flows. I think this compared to like maybe a website where you can tell iconography and assets have been pulled from different places. This just seems so much more cohesive, and I think it actually explains and tells the story of the brand a lot better.
And technically not that difficult at all.
So obviously we've already touched on how video and how 3D and things like that can be really effective to amplify and really make your brand stand out on your website. And I've already talked about how we can really tailor our video and our video strategy to help our SEO. But just as a quick example of a way that we've actually done that. So we worked with a company called iDocs who wanted to amplify the messaging and promote awareness around their new product, CAFM. So it's exactly what we did that I was talking about earlier. We did keyword research and we knew certain terms were promoting people to go to the site. But then when they actually got onto the site, the content wasn't the best of explaining why they're actually there. So the bounce rate and in terms of the dwell time and people actually arriving on the site, they'd usually hop straight off. What we did is we figured out a way that we could produce content that really answered those questions that people were arriving on the site looking for answers for. So we did just that. We based a series of videos all on those keyword terms. We put them on the site, made sure that the content wasn't in isolation, and we delivered them on the site. So it's just a really clear, concise, and effective way, I think, that we can use video to benefit our SEO in terms of it pulling through onto the search end and results pages, and through rich snippets and things like that. So just in terms of key takeaways for this section, I think the first one is, if you're not using video on your website at all, you need to definitely start thinking about it. Obviously, we've talked about brand-led explainer videos. We've talked about that you can use video banners. We've talked about all the 3D things, that all about world building and really creating an experience on your website. So yeah, I think the core takeaway is, if you're not currently using video on your website yet, you need to massively think about it. So I think in terms of your website, I think if you make your content more relevant and more dynamic and freely available to people who visit, it's going to have benefits like increasing dwell time. It's going to have benefits like reducing bounce rate. It's going to increase engagement. And overall, it's just a really effective way of marketing your products and your business to a wider audience. And I think the other key takeaway here is that there isn't just one route to implement video on your website. We've talked about brand-led explainers and content that can actually sit on your site. But as Jack's already talked about, there's a whole world building and 3D aspect that we can get into as well. Which I think brings us nicely on to our next section, which is how can we use video across our organic and paid social. Obviously, we've talked about websites, but when it comes to social, it's absolutely massive. You've got things like Facebook, X, TikTok, which is obviously absolutely huge, LinkedIn. There's so many platforms and there's so many different formats and types of videos that we need to create across our social. So I think the first core question is, how can we actually improve our existing output? Because there's many ways. So what are a few of the key ways that we can really improve our output going forwards and make fine tunes and fine tweaks here and there to get the best out of what we're currently doing? So just in terms of a few key ways that I really think we can improve our video offering across social. So I think the first one that I'm going to talk about quite a bit is, I think we need to tell a compelling story. I think for me, this is one of the most effective ways that we really can make our videos stand out. I think we've seen in the past, and big brands, think of John Lewis. Not only are they just creating content anymore, they're actually telling stories. I think when you tell a compelling story and when you really get your hooks into people, that's when consumers and customers take action. So I think that's one of the things we're going to talk about. I've touched on it a little bit already, but I think we need to think about utilizing captions. Obviously, in terms of accessibility, this is absolutely massive. We need to think about experimenting with different formats. So it's not just 16:9 or landscape for YouTube anymore. We need to think about how we can appropriate and differentiate our formats across the channels so that they are best suited to those devices. We need to think about including a call to action that's relevant, that's going to have impact, and that actually delivers results. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can change up our call to action depending on where the video content is going to sit. And there's also, many more things that we could have talked about. So you can improve video by, maybe understanding your audience a little bit better, by capturing attention quickly, making sure the first 5 seconds are really engaging, optimizing for mobile viewing, and just overall making your content on brand. And then lastly, which I think is quite important, is actually setting clear goals. So don't just create content for content's sake. Make sure that the video that you're producing, or the different types of videos, the series of videos that you're producing, actually have clear goals and are going to be put at certain points within your marketing mix and your marketing strategy that actually delivers results. So I think these are just a few of the things that we can start to think about to improve our video going forwards. Which brings me on to my first point, which I think for me, it's probably my favorite point. It is tell compelling stories. I've put there, the best videos make us feel something, and I really think that's the case. Videos can make us, happy, sad, motivated, curious. These emotional reactions, it's proof of a compelling story being told, I think. If we tell a compelling story and we make someone emotive, if we actually touch on their emotions, they're more likely to take action, which is going to have the result of increasing engagement on your post. So when you're creating video content for your socials, try to think about that. Try to think about what audience do you want to approach and how do you want them to react. If you want someone to care about a certain product, you're going to have to film or shoot or tailor your narrative in a certain way. We can actually approach any type of asset in this way. I think quite often businesses and people who make videos get stuck in a rut of just thinking that you have to produce just videos for the sake of it, where I think if you take a more emotive approach, there's actually an interesting way to tell any story. And if we lean on that, we can really make our audiences feel what we feel. We can make them understand our values as a business, and they're then going to take action. And then maybe if we do that, we can plant a seed of loyalty in their mind, and they're going to be more likely to come back and use you as a business going forwards. So just on that, as an example of one of my favourite adverts that does this, it's the Guinness advert. So you might have seen this one before, but for me, this one really, really stands out.
Maybe I didn't treat you quite as good as I should have. Maybe I didn't love you quite as often as I could have. Little things I should have said and done, I just never took the time. You were always on my mind. You were always on my mind.
So obviously that's the Guinness advert. I mean, for me, I absolutely love it. I don't know what it is about it. Maybe it's the soundtrack, but for me, like I was saying, I think it takes Guinness as a product, elevates it completely, and it's just a compelling story. I mean, it makes me want a pint of Guinness, first of all, and I just absolutely love the messaging behind it, which I think brings us on nicely to something that we've produced. So this is a video for Straight Line Northeast, who are a local housing contractor who work a lot in the Northeast region and a lot with communities. And they wanted to tell a story of Stan. When we started working with them, the project initially was going to go one way, but we soon realized that there was a real tangible, authentic, compelling, obviously, as we're talking about that, compelling story here. So I'm not really going to say too much other than I think it's probably my favorite video that I've created, that I've worked on, just because I love the story. And yeah, I think it's a real example that we can approach, traditional videos in a non-traditional way, tell a compelling story, and it's really going to help shape the narrative and the ideas behind your brand. So it's a good example to me that there are different ways of going about it. So this is Stan's story.
I'm James McGee and I'm an installer, and I've been with Straight Line for 15 years now. Straight Line are a northeast company that supply new fire doors in regulation and install windows and doors in council properties. We're here today at Iris Stedman House to install new fire doors, as the old ones were not up to scratch. Fire safety is a massive thing nowadays, and Newcastle's top of the game. Straight Line's made Newcastle safer, greener, and they've been so proactive with their fire safety.
Stan Callan, Blake now. The morning when they came, I tried to keep out the way, but he said to me, one of the chaps, he says, Stan, look, just sit where you are. He says, we can't work around this, I wasn't feeling the best because I'd been having trouble with my heart. I had a heart attack. I was sitting and one of the chaps, he says, Stan, listen, you don't look the best. I says, honestly, I'm not. He says, Stan, listen, do you want me to phone your daughter up? Isn't that nice of them, just two workmen, the work they done here in my house, and when I was feeling unwell, and how they were concerned about me. Honestly, I would recommend them because they were really marvellous, left the place spotless. I didn't have to do nothing in the house.
So I hope you like Stan's story. Like I said, it's probably one of my favourites. And I think just to finish off, a few things that we can do to improve our videos across social, just in terms of little tweaks here and there. I think the first one it's something I've already talked about. It's making sure that you have captions, because accessibility is king. So captions should be standard across all of your content. There's two main forms of captions. There are closed captions, which essentially means that the captions or the subtitles are actually baked into the video itself. So this is something that we do quite a lot, whether a client or a customer wants it on the video or off the video. We call it closed or open. So closed means it's on the video and you can't turn it off. And open captions means we provide an SRT file, which is just a fancy way of saying like it's the subtitles but not actually baked into the video. They can upload that, and then the SRT file talks to Facebook or TikTok or Twitter, and then it gives the consumer the option to click and turn the captions off whenever they want to. Obviously, when we're talking about Facebook, there's a stat, I think it's like 90% of people on Facebook watch videos without sound. So subtitles are absolutely, vital if we're thinking about it in terms of that. Depending on what videos you're working on as well, I think something that's becoming increasingly more vital is audio description. So people who are visually impaired, making sure that you are describing on screen what is happening, not just with subtitles, but with audio description. So people can really take in the content, regardless of any visual impairment. Utilising captions, across our content, regardless of wherever it is, it means that it's inclusive, and it means that people can engage with it and really take it in, no matter who they are or where they watch it. The next tip, I think it's something that we take for granted, but it's making sure that you experiment with formats. So there are three kind of core video formats that we like to talk about, and it's 16:9, which is the industry standard, not just for videos, for things like laptop screens and things like that. It's the typical landscape video that you'll see, very popular on YouTube in terms of long form content. We've also got square, which is often called 1:1, and that's very popular on things like Twitter and LinkedIn. And then lastly, probably is the biggest format I think at the moment is 9:16, otherwise known as portrait. The proliferation of things like TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram stories, Instagram Reels, it's really made 9:16 or portrait video kind of an essential part of any video marketing strategy. It's almost, that is the core asset now. It's getting to a point where things like Google Ads and Performance Max, they actually prefer that content because when you are watching it on your mobile, it's fully optimized for that screen. If someone's scrolling and they come across a 9:16 video on their screen, it takes up a lot more real estate, so it actually fills up the entire screen. So it's got that benefit, and it's a lot more captive to that audience. So yeah, three different types: 16:9, square or 1:1, and 9:16. And the core message here is really think about these different formats when you are making your content. I don't think it's enough anymore just to create YouTube or 16:9 videos. I think we really need to start thinking about, if we are making an asset, we need to tailor it for every different format. And just to kind of practice what we preach, this is an example of some content that we created for Heriot University. So they wanted to advertise their range of sports science degrees, and we delivered the core asset, which was 16:9, but then we also adapted that for square and for portrait. So it meant that when going forwards, they could really tailor and figure out where they wanted to put their content based on the platform, and they had an asset to fit every platform and every channel. So it's massively important. So I think going forwards, things like portrait and things like square, they're just going to get even bigger because they're optimized for mobile, tablets and things like that. And 16:9 is always going to have a place, but I just think it really makes sense to pay attention to all three. And lastly, just some tips on call to actions. So you might commonly hear these referred to as CTAs, just means call to actions. These are absolutely crucial for any video. We tend to not produce an asset if it doesn't have a call to action on it, because we know just how important it is and just how crucial it is to really speak directly to the audience and ask them to take an action. So in terms of tips going forwards, how can we ensure that our call to actions are relevant? How can we make sure that they're actually targeted in the right way? And how can we make sure that they have a sense of urgency that really is going to promote action from the customer? So those were just a few things that I think that we can do to improve our video output across social media. I think video and social media, they're kind of best friends. I think we all know that. I think things like TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, these channels really work well with video, and I think the majority of us know that by now. But just in terms of a few key takeaways that we can implement across our video strategy, I think we've already talked about it. I think try and tell compelling stories where relevant. or try and approach a traditional brief in a different way. Try to get a bit of an emotive feel or a bit of an emotive angle on it, because I think when you touch on the customers or the individual's emotion, I think that promotes action. Utilize captions. Make sure that all of your content, all of the video content that you're producing can be accessed from anyone. Make sure it's inclusive. I think make sure that you have relevant call to actions, and the call to actions are really going to promote some urgency. And then lastly, just experiment with different formats. Obviously, we've touched on the core 3 that we like to produce here at Mediaworks, but there are others out there that you can experiment with, and each has its place in your market mix and in your strategy. And then I think the last thing is just to set clear goals. Make sure that any video asset that you are producing, whether it's on social or whether it's on your website, wherever it is, just make sure that you know where it's going, you know who it's going to target, and you know in your head what it's trying to achieve. And for me, that's the main thing, just making sure that we can utilize video in a way that it's going to work and we're going to get the best out of it, rather than just producing content for content's sake. So we've done website, we've done social media, organic and paid. The last thing that we're going to talk about is 3D and fake out of home, or faux out of home.
I think we have 2 great examples here of fake out of home advertising. We've got Maybelline on one hand, who are putting giant eyelashes on public transport around London. And then we've got JD on the other side, who are putting giant puffer jackets on Big Ben. Yeah. And it's funny that it's being referred to as fake out of home, because if you're a user experiencing this video online and you believe it's real, this is what CGI and VFX is all about. Fooling your audience, it looks completely photorealistic. The comments flooded on these viral campaigns went along the lines of, is this still there? Is this real? Is the jacket still on Big Ben?
I must admit, I saw the Maybelline one and I thought it was real.
Which is, to me, as a 3D artist, it's fascinating to see. Yeah. Because when I see the Big Ben jacket straight away, I just think, this is great VFX work, this is great 3D work. But when I start seeing comments like, is it still there? It makes you realize, okay, this is out of home advertising. If you're a user who's experienced this and you believe that's there on the public transport in London, you believe those giant eyelashes are on that bus, you have just had the out of home advertising experience.
It's more likely to go viral if people are debating, is it real or not?
Exactly. And the articles that were spiraling about whether it was real or not, there was people debunking the Big Ben wearing the puffer jacket. And there's... this is a great example of how we can fuse storytelling, video, and CGI all in one, as well as product rendering.
So if I was a business and I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe I sell boxing gloves, and I want to put a boxing glove on the Alan Shearer statue at St James's Park to really promote that brand of boxing gloves. I think in the past you might have been like, I don't even know where to start. But with the way 3D is going, and someone like you has a lot of expertise, how easy is it to bring a campaign like that to life?
This is absolutely achievable now. With any sort of 3D rendering software or video editor, the magic here is embedding that CGI with the footage flawlessly, as in it's tracked into the shot flawlessly. Yeah. In terms of how much 3D/CGI has taken up visual weight on the screen, not so much. The eyelashes, the makeup brush will be very basic models. Yeah. It's how you use those models, and there's clear planning and intentions on these examples.
Yeah, I think that's really exciting. I think as technology advances and things like that, I think these type of campaign examples are only going to get more and more popular, which means the more and more accessible for businesses. And I think things like that, it's only going to yield better results for people, because sometimes people have a lot of ideas flying about, but they don't actually know how to put it into practice. But as we know, we've got people like you who can make these things happen.
And another fascinating thing about it, if your CG looks photorealistic, if the video you've created looks completely uncanny, then it's going to have a much longer shelf life. People are going to be able to watch the videos 2 years later, maybe, despite having no relevance, maybe. It's always going to look photorealistic.
You could always reuse the assets as well.
And exactly, you can revisit these 3D models, you can relight them, we can maybe put the eyelashes somewhere else. Let's put the jacket on another structure in London. Yeah. That's the magic of 3D. You're not locked in with this single-use video, nothing's baked, you've got your assets now, and we can maybe experiment with trying them on another setting, in another scenario. And you'll see, like the Maybelline campaign, it wasn't just this one shot they made. Yeah. They put eyelashes on multiple vehicles around London. This leads us quite nicely onto actual out-of-home advertising. Yeah. I've seen an increased use of anamorphic 3D animations, like on the Piccadilly billboard.
When you said anamorphic? Not everyone's going to know what that means. What does it mean?
3D anamorphic animation is tailored to go on a billboard and give a false sense of depth, which is what's being shown here. This is just a flat, compressed video.
So when things look like 3D, but they're not.
Yeah, it's giving fake depth to users. So yes, the Piccadilly billboard, most people are going to be stood at the right angle, but if you are stood to the side, you're going to notice this is just a flat 2D video.
I've always thought that so you have to be
it's
at the
a
right
forced
angle.
perspective animation, but with things like the MSG sphere opening, these anamorphic animations are only going to increase. And it leads again nicely onto a cohesive way of telling a brand story.
And then obviously lastly, you've talked a little bit about this already, but talking about product rendering, talk to me a bit about that.
It's a very popular production pipeline at the moment, and I think the logistics behind a traditional video or photo shoot are so complicated in comparison to shooting a product digitally. If we want to render a photorealistic makeup product or whatever the item is we're modeling, we have so much more leeway in 3D software in terms of how we can light the products, the composition of the shot, trying different formats quickly, like you say. When you go and if you opt in for a traditional photo shoot, there's a lot more hands on deck. Studio rental can get expensive, the lighting needs to be correct, and when you do take those photographs and you're finished with the day, you are locked in with those photographs. And I think product rendering is so powerful because the amount of hands on set that are needed for traditional product shoots and videos compared to just me being able to shoot products by myself in the computer with the ability to apply whatever animation I like to it, whatever lighting setup is very powerful. And it's only going to get smoother as technology evolves.
Which I think probably takes us on nicely to VR. I think obviously VR is absolutely massive at the moment. So talk to me about like VR in resale. Where do you see that going?
There's AR and VR, augmented reality, which tries to implement 3D rendering into your current situation, as opposed to VR, which is virtual reality, which is an entirely virtual environment, which is being utilized by architects and all sorts of sectors now for office walkthroughs or things like that. Obviously, it's predominantly video game development as well, VR at the moment, but we can actually utilize augmented reality for many aspects of marketing. You know, AR's revolved around the fact that you can create an improvement of what's going on currently. With IKEA having such a vast library of products that they're trying to sell in furniture, the only viable way to allow consumers to experiment with these products is visualizing that piece of furniture in their own home. And that's what the IKEA app does very well. It uses real world scale. All of the furniture on the app is real world scale.
I don't know if anyone's actually used IKEA. Was that IKEA Home, IKEA Place?
IKEA Place.
IKEA Place.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone's actually used that who's watching the masterclass, but if you haven't, I'd properly recommend it. Blew my mind. Me and my wife, we shop quite regularly at IKEA, and being able to actually go into your own home, be in your own home, but click on any product that you might want and digitally put it in your home and see the scale. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and at the forefront of this, it's going to allow consumers to make the correct buying decisions first time, with a huge amount of people wanting to make purchases on websites that offer augmented reality.
I think that's the exciting thing. Obviously, we've talked about like traditional video, especially on websites and social and things like that. Sorry, but I think the exciting thing about this is the actual commercial applications and the applications for businesses going forwards and how they can be creative with it.
Absolutely, and there's no surprise that this kicked off during COVID.
That's a good point, yeah.
With people not allowed to enter shops at all. What's the solution we can do here? How about people can shop at home? Virtual try-on technology is huge at the moment. Being able to try on a pair of shoes or a coat or a pair of jeans in the comfort of your own home without having to purchase a single thing is very powerful. It's a very powerful tool that needs to be utilized across e-commerce, and it's only possible with 3D rendering and CGI.
Great. Right, well, that pretty much sums up the masterclass. I hope you found it extremely beneficial. I hope you've got value from it. Just a few of the key takeaways. I think obviously we've looked at how to improve, the output of your video when it comes to your website, how you can use it to increase SEO visibility. We've also talked about, paid social and organic and a few of the tips that we can use in those, across those channels to really make sure that our videos are, targeting the right people at the right time. And I think the main takeaway is just how we can really leverage digital media to get the best out of it, how we can leverage video to make sure that it's making the right impact. Like I touched on earlier, a lot of people view it as a nice to have, luxury, a bit of an afterthought that you might bolt on to the end of like an already existing campaign. But I think for us here at Mediaworks, obviously a lot of what we do is supported by data, and we really think that video is an integral part of any campaign. It can fit into SEO, it can fit into PPC, social, out of home. And if you do the research and it's targeted and you know the expectations of your campaign and you know what your video is trying to do, then it really makes it a lot more clearer that where you need video and when you need to implement video in order to achieve your goals as a business. So obviously we've talked about a lot of the ways that you can be creative with it. And yeah, I think overall we just hope that you've got some value out of it. You've learned a few jargon words, 3D jargon words. I've learned a few. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Hope you've enjoyed it. And we'll see you in the next masterclass. So thanks, guys.